Let's do some business now because the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, ICU, has cautioned the Minister of Finance, Seth Terkper, not to introduce more taxes in the 2016 budget or risk industrial agitations. The ICU is also mounting pressure on the Minister to indicate strategies in the budget on how to protect local businesses from collapse.
The Minister of Finance, Seth Terkper, is expected to deliver the 2016 budget on Friday, November 13, 2015. Ahead of the presentation, the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union is cautioning the minister not to introduce more taxes. The ICU insists more taxes in the coming years would trigger industrial agitations.
Recently, we made a lot of agitation on the SMS taxes. Okay? It's still going on, and I don't know how many Ghanaians are watching their bank statements and see how these things plays out. A lot of money is being generated. If in the revenue expectation of the finance minister, it is not going to meet its expenditure, I will not be too much surprised if they generate another form of taxation.
Already, the ICU has expressed worry over the prolonged power crisis which has affected operations of companies and businesses. Over 1,000 workers have been laid off by some companies as a result of the power crisis. But the ICU is asking the finance minister to indicate clearly how power will be financed from next year.
We are looking at the budget where its focus on power, okay, will be more clearer than we had ever thought. Because power issues have saddled the development and progress of this economy. Industry have suffered badly because of power issues. We've all seen the very inconsistent consistency of government. Each time it is said, we will do this, this is happening, and that is happening, and never happens. And it's like employers who have done so well to sustain whatever they are doing now with a very high cost.
The ICU echoes calls by energy experts on government to desist from over-reliance on oil revenue to finance other projects. The union also asked government to consider implementing the Senchi Consensus on the economy to resolve Ghana's economic challenges. It charged the sector minister to disclose how local companies would be protected from collapsing.
We also look at our beverage industry. Now that we've opened our doors and people are importing all kinds of beverages into the system, that is even creating disease and sickness for our children. We want to see what the budget is doing around that, whether stiffer, tax imposition on the importation of those things, or we are leaving them to come and compete with the indigenous and local or multinational companies that are in here.
Well, in other news, a financial analyst, Derek Mensah, says the city will be relatively stable, barring any occurrence ahead of the Yuletide. He, however, cautioned importers to be prudent with their import and sales because consumer sentiments are very, very low.
Derek Mensah, the seasonal depreciation of the city is due to imports ahead of Christmas.
There's always a possibility, there's a firm possibility. If you actually look at numbers before last year was 2014, so numbers before 2014, you realize that there's usually a trend. We tend to dip around these times, so from September, October, and probably we level off somewhere mid-November, thereabout. But last year and this year have been very different years. If you look at the graph or you look at the depreciation, you realize that a lot of things have changed within the year. So when we had to depreciate, it didn't depreciate where we had. So it's difficult to predict that, well, this is going to happen.
He indicated some measures had been implemented by the central bank to deal with such shocks.
I think the central bank perceived that this will happen. So around the July, August, we saw the central bank pumping so much dollars, dropped the currency, brought the cedi so high against the dollar, and therefore when the depreciation set in, we kind of had a buffer in there. So I think that all in all, we should see a fairly stable currency.
He advised importers and buyers on trading activities during this period.
From the numbers that I'm seeing, people don't have a lot of disposable income to be spending around the Christmas time. So perhaps maybe somewhere around 2013, 2012. Even last year we experienced that. And this year things have gotten worse. So if you are buying a lot of things and hoping that you're going to have a killing during Christmas, you probably may be surprised. Even for the staple stuff that we consume on a daily basis, people are not seeing that rapid pickup. For importers generally, should be very calm or prudent in their imports, or they'll get stuck with a lot of stock.
Former South African President Thabo Mbeki says African leaders must, as a matter of urgency, join forces to curb illicit financial flows, which is draining the continent of substantial domestic resources. He was addressing the media at the just ended two-day sub-regional workshop on illicit financial flows in Accra.
A report by the high-level panel on illicit financial flows set up by the Economic Commission for Africa and the African Union Commission in 2012 cited illicit financial flows as the highest impediment to Africa's structural transformation. Criminal flows followed by bribery and theft by government officials were named as the three sources of cross-border illicit financial flows. These are funds that would otherwise be used for development. However, weak national and regional capacities impede efforts to curb illicit financial flows. A two-day sub-regional workshop on curbing illicit financial flows from Africa has commenced in Accra. The workshop, chaired by the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, is being attended by parliamentarians from member states, regional economic communities, regional financial revenue and customs organizations and experts.
African economies are currently going through a rough patch. Demand for raw materials exports has sharply declined. Commodities prices have dropped drastically. Drought is adversely affecting agricultural production and hydropower generation. So clearly there is need for a new strategy for African economies. 50 years of externally inspired or formulated policies have not borne much fruit for Africa.
Participants are expected to come up with legislative actions required in terms of laws, policies and regulations to stem illicit financial flows at the national and sub-regional levels.
Having policies around the treatment of frozen funds.
That's all for business.